Uh, Dear parents, I hope you can hear me. Anyone to confirm that they can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, Mr. Kisman.
Hi, how
We
are
can
you?
Loud
hear
and
you.
clear.
Great. I was making sure my Wi-Fi is good enough. Last time I got messed up in a way. So dear parents, once again, good afternoon. Welcome to our second edition of the Parents Webinar this term. Yes, we are back this time, bigger, better, and of course, what? Public demand with a father's representative this time around. I hope you have your gadgets in order, volume up, microphones muted for now, maybe even a snack or a cup of coffee. When I look around, it's getting drastically cold here. It might be changing, the weather might be changing. A cup of coffee or tea or whatever it is, of warm, and stand by because it's going to be an awesome session. So let's all settle in as we prepare to dive into the world of modern parenting, certainly the Gayaza High School way. I'll start off at exactly 4 p.m. Because our program might stretch up to 6:20ish. When I looked around, I tried to put the activities and all the segments for today's webinar, and somehow I think we can, with your allowance, go up to 6:20. Already 31 people online. Usually the quorum is 50. And when we are 50, we are. Thank you so much for coming very early and checking in already early enough so we can have a smooth start. I am going to request, let me look at the list here. Who's going to give us an opening? I had engineer giving us an opening prayer. Today, let me see. I had a gentleman. This time I'm going to have a lady. Um, um, right. Since today is 1st December, I'll go with the names that start with A. I'll drop the formalities. Annette Kauma, would you want to give us an opening prayer when it clocks 4 p.m.?
Okay, let us humble ourselves for our word of prayer.
Hey, we have
Heavenly
5 minutes for
Father.
people to log in, dear Annette.
Okay.
We just give us five more minutes. Good.
Okay.
We're just 38. Thank you very much.
So
So I want to invite Annette Kauma once again to come and lead us in an opening prayer at exactly 4 p.m. We are starting our webinar. Annette, you're most welcome.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Let's humble ourselves. A word of prayer. Heavenly Father, in the mighty name of Jesus, for today, we thank you for the gift of life. We thank you for Gaia's High School. We thank you for our amazing teachers. We thank you for tuition. We thank you for all the parents, oh Father. We thank you, Father, for the children you have blessed us with, Lord. We give and honor to you. We commit this time that we are going to be sharing together into your hands. We ask you, Father, to be amidst and to be present at this meeting. Be the one, Lord, to guide everything that is going to take place. Grant us the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Help us to understand whatever is going to be shared. That as we continue learning more and more, Father, we shall be able, Lord, to take care of the children. And these children, oh God, we pray that you bless them, Lord, to also do the same when they grow up. Father, we give glory and honor to you. We thank you for all the facilitators, Father, and this conducive environment and the idea of, Lord, learning and sharing and getting more knowledge to, Lord, take care of the children you have blessed us with. We commit everything into thy hand, and we pray that you will be with us throughout this meeting, and whatever results, whatever learning we shall get will be to bring glory to your name. We bless your name, Father. Son Jesus Christ, we have prayed. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Annette Kauma. Allow me please to drop the formalities, and I'll just go with with just the names, the plain names. I'll not put other Mrs., the doctor, the professor. I'll address you as parents of Kayaza High School. Thank you very much, Annette.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
All right. Because at Kayaza High School, already start
You're
with
welcome, guys.
at the center of everything. That's why we start with prayer. And our number one core value is godliness. Once again, a very warm welcome to you all, parents, guardians, friends, staff, and administrators of Kayaza High School. Our second webinar this term. After last weekend's amazing session, would not wait to meet you again. Thankfully, we are here again. I thought that the last one was a very good one. Hold on tight, because today we are taking this one a notch even higher. So parenting today, in this ever-changing world, is like trying to balance one leg. Quite tricky, but not impossible. Sit back, relax, and get ready for an exciting and insightful session. Gayaza parents, guardians, you are in for a treat. So I'm going to just take you through our program. Shared it on the WhatsApp platforms. We already settled in, and some people are joining us. The prayer is done. My remarks are done, which I'll hear from the administrator. We shall get to Julie, our counselor, to give us a few remarks and introduce the panelists. We have a key presentation by Dr. Rachel Kansime, and thereafter we shall get into the dad's perspective. A lot of people are talking about, we don't see any dads here, I don't see any gentlemen represented. Thankfully, today we have Mr. David Mbabazi to give us his way when it comes to contemporary parenting. Then we shall have a presentation by Dr. Esther Namfuka on child protection issues. We shall also have HIV/AIDS presentation done by Dr. Elizabeth Nalintia, and that's about teens and young adults. We shall have a question and answer session. And that's why we're going to roll through this very, very fast, and we shall have that closing. So basically that will be our program. I pray and hope that Mrs. Chizito, our head teacher, is online already. So it is now my honor to invite the head teacher to welcome us to this second edition of the Parents Webinar formally. You know, without the administration, a lot of these things would not happen easily. So let us give the head teacher and our team, the administrators at Gayaza High School, a virtual round of applause. The mic. You are most welcome. So, looks like the head teacher is having some problems connecting to us here. I'm just going to give her, I'm just going to try and call her in 1 minute to see how far she has got. And if she's not here, we shall see how we progress. Give me a moment, please. I can see she's typing here on the screen, having some challenges. Oh, tells me she's in another meeting, so she's not able. Having a concurrent meeting, I thought she would be here with us. So we shall move forward. Maybe we shall she'll find us and give us her welcome still, because you're always welcome to Gayaza High School. So right there, I will have our incredible school counselor, the person who is not only the girls' listening ear, but also our go-to expert on several critical, personal, and of course, parenting matters. She'll be introducing today's lineup of panelists. And I know these panelists are an A team, I should say, ready to blow our minds with their expertise. Over to you, Julika. We call her Julika.
Thank you, Innocent. Thank you so much. And thank you for that flattering introduction. Okay, so all members on board, all parents, you're all welcome online. We thank you so much for today. We thank you for sparing the time to be online. We thank you for the support that you give the students, the school, and every one of us. And we thank you for each and everything. But above all, I would like to thank the members who directly support the counseling department. I would like to thank Dr. Kathy Maiteki, Dr. Esther Namfuka, Dr. Rachel Kansime, Mrs. Dan, Olivia Kagwa, and then the nurses and the teachers and all other people. We thank you so much for the support that you give the students, plus Mrs. Magaya also. We thank her so much. Like Innocent said, we are, in one way or the other, we are the listening ear to the students. We do the mental support, the emotional support for the students. And we really appreciate and we appreciate that position. We appreciate the role that we are doing. And in one way or the other, I think we are doing something and we are happy to be here today. So I would like to make a disclaimer before we go any further. So like I said last time through our first meeting, we said that we are not online to tell you how to raise your children. Not really. But we are here because in our line of work, we notice a few things here and there. We see a little bit of gaps here and there. And that is why we thought that it would be better that as we help the students, I think we also need to give feedback to the parents so that they get to know why are things happening this way, why is this like this, etc. And maybe they also check themselves so that we raise the future generation very well. So we are here to inform you of certain things that we need to know, the basics that we need to know, and that is it. But we are not here to tell you how to raise your children. And that is basically the reason as to why the virtual meetings were born, because we really needed to give feedback to the parents. So at this moment, I would like to introduce our panelists today. We have a number of them. We have Dr. Rachel Kansime. She's a counseling psychologist. And Dr. Rachel Kansime is a clinical psychologist, and she supports the girls very, very well. She does a lot of work with the students. Every weekend on Sundays, she does a lot of work with them. Dr. Maiteki is a doctor, a medical doctor. I think you know her very well. Dr. Esther Namfuka is a social scientist, and she also supports us in one way or the other. Dr. Elizabeth Nalintia is a medical doctor. She will also be online to give us a perspective of HIV/AIDS in Uganda. Remember, today is 1st December, is World AIDS Day. Then Mrs. Dan Olivia Kagwa is a psychologist also, and she supports us in one way or the other. And then me, Juliet Kavuma, I'm the sitting counselor, and I support the students and the staff in one way or the other. And we also welcome on board Mr. Mbabazi. Mr. Mbabazi David, we welcome him on board today because there was an outcry that we need a male perspective. We need the fathers on board. So we have the fathers on board today. Thank you so much, Kizmag. I return the mic to you to invite our first presenter.
All right, before I invite the first presenter, thank you very much, Julie Kav, our counselor there. Amulongo in the chat section has guided me, and said item is not available. Please invite the deputy head teacher to say hello to us before this all starts. No objection. At this point, let me invite Mrs. Annette Kabogoza. Hello to the parents to give us remarks from the administration. And Annette Kabogoza, you're most welcome. Mrs. Kabogoza, are you able to hear me? Are you able to unmute your microphone so you can give us some opening remarks? Okay, we shall get those remarks, no worries. So when we get them, you treat them as opening remarks whenever they come in. So at this very, very moment, let's get to the main road. Dr. Rito Kansime Kanyanga, who is about to take us on a journey through parenting challenges in this current era, to guide us on which way to go. I know this is going to be thought-provoking, eye-opening, and possibly the best thing you have had since the week. Of course, now that I'm telling you, the girls are getting holidays on Thursday.
Kisma, can you hear me now?
Okay. Mrs. Kabogoza, I am glad that you're here. You can give us you're most welcome. You can give us the opening remarks.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much, Kismak. Good afternoon, our dear parents. We thank God for yet another Sunday afternoon where we meet as stakeholders of Gayaza High School, and more so the parents and the staff of Gayaza High School. I want to welcome you so much and for sparing this time to be with us. I want to thank Julie, our counselor, school counselor, and also the panelists. I want to thank you so much for coming in, for sparing time, for loving our girls. Thank you so much. We love what you do, and because of what you do, able to continue peacefully and calmly in ensuring that our girls survive in Gayaza High School because of the many issues that they have. And I want to welcome the parents for taking interest in what we are doing, because this is a time when we are sharing experiences, advices, and so on. I want to thank all those who have put in their time to tell us, to guide us, and to share.
I don't know if I'm the only one who has lost Mrs. Kabogoza, but looks like okay, she's back. Mrs. Kabogoza, we had lost you. Could you just complete those remarks? Okay, looks like she's back.
Okay. I think my network, but I was thanking I'm thanking you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Kisma, can you hear me?
Very well, very well.
Yes, I will. Okay. I want to welcome all the parents. I want to welcome our panelists. And I want to thank you, Kismag, for putting this together, and for Julie Kavma for the organization. I welcome the parents who are for sparing this time. You know, bringing up children is not learned, but in one lesson, but it is something that we keep learning as time goes on because of the different experiences people share with us. So I want to thank you so much. Kisma, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you. Yes, you are. You are.
Okay. Okay. So I want to wish all the parents a successful and good hearing and meeting. And We welcome all our presenters to this. We are eagerly waiting to hear from you. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you so much, Mrs. Annette Kaboguzamsuke, representing the administration in afternoon. Yes, we've had the warmth of her voice. It settled when we hear from an administrator, first things. So I want to also welcome those who have just joined us, the parents that have just joined us. I can see the numbers are rising. We're about 173 already, so you are most welcome. Let's get to the main road. I think Dr. Kansime is about to take us on a journey through the parenting challenges in this era and to guide us on which way forward. So Dr. Rachel Kansime.
Thank you very much, Kismag, and thank you very much, everyone who has logged in.
Hands. Clap your hands. Clap your hands.
Okay, some noise there. Okay, thank you once again for having me here. I must say that I feel so humbled doing this, but I also feel so honored because I know it's a very important aspect of our lives as we journey together. So I want to thank everybody who logged in last Sunday and also has logged in again today. And I'm looking forward to our interactions. Now, I'm going to share, contemporary challenges in parenting, which way to go. Now, as I talk, I am a parent as well of teenagers, 4 teenagers, and that's not very easy. So some of the things I'm going to share, they're not things I have read about or heard about. They are things that I've experienced firsthand. And so, as a way of introduction, what are the challenges, or what do we mean by parenting style? Let's go to the next slide. Now, when we talk about parenting style, we are basically looking at a philosophy, what somebody believes in, what we carry in our heads. And this is usually based on how we conduct ourselves before our children. Now, our behavior towards our children, the way we speak, the body language, the way we project, and the boundaries we set are all encompassed in our parenting style. So if someone is wondering what a parenting style is, it's just basically that, And there are many different types of parenting styles. And last Sunday, we went through some of them, and I'll do that again today. And I must say, just like Julie said, that we are not here to say, this is the way you should parent your children. We are here to engage and interface with each other, and come up with, certain ways that can help us on this parenting journey. Now, just as I mentioned last time, there's no one style which is better than the other. We don't have a golden rule here saying, do it this way, you're going to get it done and you get a good product, And I just want to say that, our upbringing, the way we were brought up, the beliefs that we have and we hold on to, have a very significant impact on the way we parent. Now, sometimes we change with the times, we engage different perspectives, we change different styles, depending on the circumstance. But it's very important to understand the positive and the negative effects of the different parenting styles and how they impact on our children. so that we are more cautious, you know, we are so mindful of what we do while raising our children. Next. Now, we talked about the authoritarian parenting style. This is a conventional method of raising a child. And those who are in my age bracket will know that this is what everybody knew that was the way to go, you know? And that is where, you know, the parent is high up there, you know, is such an authority, okay? Now here, the parents demand that, you know, their kids must abide by the guidelines that they set forth, you know? And if the children disobey or they fail to follow the rules, they get punished, you know? And this is an iron-fisted approach. This approach generates fear in the minds of these children, you know? And they often operate in deep-rooted fear, you know? And as a lack of sincerity on their part, and this causes them to be in and out of trouble. And so it causes us parents to penalize them. Now, here, with this style, the children live in constant terror that their parents will punish them if they don't act sincerely. Now, already that is the picture of an authoritarian parenting style. Now, you know that what we sow is what we reap, you know? And so even with parenting, the parenting style that we adopt also will in turn give us the fruits. So now what are the fruits of this type of parenting? One, we have children who are exceptional achievers. And I think all parents will agree that you want exceptional achievers. Most of us want, you know, children who are in the limelight academically, socially, you know, in sports and everything. And we don't now care about the other, you know, what comes with that, okay? Now, the other fruit is that these children are not frank about their wants and their emotions. You know, they will not speak out. They will not say what it is that is acceptable to them. And then they will hide their emotions. Now, these children will lack self-confidence and often sulky because of the home environment, because there is the big authority, you know. And as I talk about this, these are things that have been researched about and they have been documented. They are not just from me, and it's not hearsay, it's not anecdotal information. Let's go on. Let's go on. Thank you. Now, the second one is the authoritative parenting style. Now, this one is more or less similar to the previous one, but it's more responsive. The parents honor the needs of their children, and the children are expected to listen and follow their parents. The children have to respect their parents, but if they are not able to achieve the desired results, then the parents, instead of punishing or admonishing, they show more support and care. Under this parenting style, the parents communicate in a supportive way to make their children understand where they are lacking and also show them the direction to move and to improve on. Now, what are the fruits? Let's get on to the next slide. The children are more sincere in their efforts. They value their parents' words. They are more confident. They are happier. And this happiness is inside and out. Now, this parenting style boosts their social, cognitive, and emotional growth. Now, from my previous presentation last Sunday, we talked about the growth of children at the teenage, according to Erik Erikson, a psychologist who theorized about the psychosocial development. And I mentioned the identity crisis and what comes around that stage of development. We will keep referring to that. Now, the other parenting style is the permissive parenting style. Now, here, this parenting style is more relaxed. You're not much for rules, though you may lay them down. The parents don't enforce the strict rules for child behavior. Now, negative reinforcement or disciplinary measures are not used. The parents are more like friends than they are like parents. Now, what are the fruits for this permissive parenting style? There's a slide before that. Okay, so now the children, the fruits of the permissive parenting style, we have children who lack direction and focus. They don't get proper guidance and support from their parents. So they are looking here, looking there, you know, trying to find where they can get the guidance from. This makes the children meander, you know, they go on wrong paths because they are trying to find direction. Their confidence level stoops too low. These are children who throw fits and tantrums, and they are often charged for wrong behavior. Now, performance in academics and other skills goes down. Next. So, how now does this parenting style impact the children? I have mentioned. Now, the kind of person your child will become will depend on how you handle situations when there is an outburst or how you manage your own emotions. Last Sunday, we looked at this, and I mentioned that sometimes we as parents are also going through our own cycle. And so we are, bound to, extrapolate or vent, our emotions onto our children, okay? And we need to watch out and know when we are not doing well ourselves. Now, as parents, you are the role model for your child, and your child draws a lot from you. You can change the style depending on the situation, just as I mentioned. You don't have to stick to one particular parenting style, because that will not augur well with the children. Now, too much fear might make a child timid and less forceful, while an environment which is too relaxed won't be challenging enough to encourage the child to work harder and also to develop. Now, when you antagonize an uninvolved parenting style, it is not right, because as humans, we tend, to snap at our children sometimes and also not to pay attention to their needs. Sometimes we might have had a bad day, like sometimes we do at work, and so caring for the child may be less, or we may not even be mindful towards their needs. And this does not really make us bad parents per se, but then we have to be mindful that it's going to have an impact on the child. And so that is a reason for us to mind what is going on around us. Now, when we talk about these parenting styles, as I mentioned, it doesn't make one better than the other. It's about being able to tell the times when to be authoritarian, when to be authoritative, when to be permissive, you know, so that you can balance how the situations are. Next. Now, when we talk about parenting, I must emphasize communication. Communication is the backbone of parenting, you know, and many people have talked about communication, and we seem to know what it is, but when it comes to parenting, it cannot be overemphasized, you know. Sometimes even when you're trying to juggle different parenting styles, it's very important that we make sure that we don't miss out on communication. Now, why? Because communication provides the building blocks for the children to emerge as strong individuals. When we communicate to our children, we are building them up. We are making them stronger. You know, we are giving them what they need to be strong. It is just like a building, and you have the bricks, and you need to reinforce them with some mortar, some cement to make the wall strong. Communication helps these adolescents to connect with us emotionally, and also to be able to develop the ability to empathize with others. You know, if a parent is struggling and does not communicate, now the child, the adolescent will be seeing all this and trying to find out, why is it the way it is? Why is it, why am I seeing what I am seeing? And if there is no that communication, if a parent can't say, oh, I am struggling with this, I'm struggling with this, it has nothing to do with you. Now, this adolescent will not learn to connect how what he or she sees relates to what the situation is. And being able to empathize comes from the ability for us to be able to communicate. Next. So what are the contemporary parenting issues? What is it that we are going through now? What is it? I know that we are in the same league, okay? And I must say that it's very important to learn the signs, all right? We need to learn the signs and to be able to tell if our adolescent is struggling so that we can intervene. You know, when we don't, sometimes it gets so late. Now, sometimes it's honestly difficult for us as parents to know the difference between the normal ups and downs of adolescence, because, you know, adolescence as a stage, you know, affects these teenagers. Sometimes they don't want to talk, you know, and sometimes they are moody, they are sulky, and you want to find out, what is it? Sometimes they won't say what it is. So it is sometimes difficult to know what is the normal ups and downs, and also what exactly, when is it a serious problem? You know, now teenagers are good at hiding their struggles, you know. Sometimes they want to show that they are, you know, super and they can manage what concerns them. A number of times I've tried to inquire and say, but what is happening? Never mind, I'll fix it. You know, I don't know if you've also had such, you know, responses, you know, but it is very important for us to learn those signs and be able to tell when we are getting into the red zone. Now, the teenagers have emotional mood swings. Some of them may have suicidal ideation. Some of them may have, all these are mood and emotional challenges. And just like I went through yesterday, rather last Sunday, these are some of the signs that they are getting into a crisis, you know. We have had here adolescents who do self-harm. They are cutting themselves. There are some unexplained injuries. Some of them go through intense emotional instability. You see extreme mood swings. And when I talk about these extreme mood swings, they can actually be extreme. Somebody can be very sad, okay? Now, some of them have low self-esteem. Now, you cannot be able to tell an issue with esteem until when you're in a situation where you expect the teenager to behave in a different way, and then you find that it is contrary. Some have negative self-image, some lack self-worth, you know, and they think they are not good enough. And some of them have issues, as I mentioned, about body images. Others have, they lack motivation. And a few, we've just seen just a few who have eating disorders, you know, because I don't want to be big according to what the definition is for big, so I'm not going to eat. And so you find some who are actually starving themselves in a way because they want to keep that image of slender, and which is actually more of the Western culture coming into ours, and it isn't our culture, it isn't what we believe, it's not part of our values. So we need to be on the lookout for all this. Next. Now, again, with the contemporary issues, you know, we've talked about the behavior challenges. Some of the teenagers become argumentative, you know. Some of them become defiant. You see completely a defiant teenager. You tell somebody what they do, what to do, and they will just reassure you how they will not do it, you know. Some of them have aggressive behavior. Some of them have anger issues, confrontational behavior. Some of them have impulsive behavior. Some of them have disrespect, you know. Somebody walks into the compound and they will just pass as if nobody has come. I visited a certain family, they are very close to us. And this teenager was, you know, on the balcony, but he just signaled to us and said, you don't have to park there, you park somewhere else. And he never even said, how are you? You know, all that is behavior. And you wonder, you say, how come somebody can do such a thing? Now, most of them have lying behavior. You know, they will tell lie after another. That is not normal. That's not acceptable. And some of these lies are actually big, you know, and these are signs of delinquent behavior. You know, some have issues of sneaking around or running away, you know. You just can't know where they have gone. Now with the technology, social media, we talked about it, there is an addiction, there is overuse, all right, of these social media, okay? Now, some have school problems. You tell somebody who was initially doing very well, has grades that are failing. Some of them have been suspended, you know. Some of them have been expelled, you know, problems at school, okay? Now, some of them have a high level of entitlement. I will not do this. I will not do this. You can't do this. You know, a high level of entitlement. Contemporary parenting issues, things that we are going through. Most of them lack responsibility, you know. Most of them blame others for their mistakes, you know. We have truancy, we have juvenile delinquency, and all these are contemporary parenting issues. These are the signs that we need to look out for as parents, you know, so that we we avoid or we prevent further bigger issues. Now we have sexual and reproductive health issues. And I must say that here as parents, the majority of us are not doing very well. I mentioned about communication, that it is very, very key. Now, who is communicating to our teens about their sexual and reproductive health? Who is talking to them? When is it, the right time to initiate sexual activity? What are the risks that are involved, These teenagers lack knowledge and skills for protecting themselves, the rates of unwanted pregnancies, unsafe abortions, etc. All these are contemporary parenting issues. We need to see how to go about them. The next slide. So which way to go? Now, we are talking about positive parenting as the way to go, that we need to adapt to positive parenting. Now, based on positive psychology, which I subscribe to, positive parenting is an approach to parenting which focuses on nurturing good behavior rather than punishing bad behavior. And as a behavior scientist, I must say that, punishment does not have a big place when we talk about reinforcement of behavior. When we talk about behavior therapies, punishment does not have a space, does not have a high space in nurturing good behavior. Now, positive parenting reinforces the idea that there are no good or bad kids, but some are different kids and they have different needs, Now, according to Alfred Adler was a psychiatrist, and he says to us that parents, that children, he says that children act in healthy ways when they feel encouraged and appreciated. Hello, am I still on? So, hello, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You're still on.
Oh, great, great. So I'm talking about positive parenting and saying that here we are nurturing good behavior and rather than punishing bad behavior. And I'm not saying that we should be complacent and we should look at bad behavior and call it good. No, I'm saying that we are taking a different turn and doing things differently. Now, according to work done by Alfred Adler, who was a psychiatrist, he says that children act in healthy ways when they feel encouraged and when they feel appreciated. So when parents find ways to foster these feelings, they will naturally promote better behavior. When children feel capable, when children feel secure, when children feel that they are connected, they are better able to understand what is right from what is wrong. Now, keeping them intrinsically motivated to behave is what is done when we do positive parenting. Now, what do positive parents do? I know that we all want to hear that. Positive parents should always make expectations clear. You know, when we don't make expectations clear, there is a danger of these children just being haphazard in whatever they are doing. When they know what is expected of them, then they are going to adhere to that. Positive parents should always be consistent and reliable. This is very, very important. You know, with children, when you say this today, tomorrow you say the other opposite, it doesn't work for them because they are watching, they want to see. Now, in positive parenting, we need to be consistent and we need to be reliable. We need to show affection and we need to also appreciate. There is a danger for us to always look for the mistakes and never to look at the good that has happened or the positive that the child has made. Now, positive parents should always seek to understand their children. You know, why is this the way it is? Why is she the way she is? Why is she behaving the way she's doing? Positive parents, we need to encourage a bit of curiosity, you know, from our children, you know, encourage them to find out why are things the way they are, you know. We need to enhance independence. We need to encourage them to be independent and guide and watch and be there as they gain their independence. It's not something that comes overnight. Now, when we positively parent, what are the outcomes or what are the fruits? We started off by looking at the different parenting styles and the fruits that we harvest as a result of the different parenting styles. So when we practice positive parenting, what are the fruits? Now, positive parenting limits negative behavior, you know. It encourages these teenagers to work towards their personal development. Positive parenting has been shown to lower instances of childhood depression. Many of these teenagers will get depressed because they don't think the parents understand them. They don't think the parents care. They just don't know what is going on around them. You know, when you do this, the next day you're reprimanded for doing this. And when you do the opposite, you're reprimanded. One of our colleagues mentioned to us that while he was growing, you know, whenever he would sit, the father would beat him for sitting. When he would stand, the father would beat him for standing. So he just didn't know what he was supposed to do. Now, in positive parenting, we are saying make expectations clear. And what are we going to get as a harvest? We are going to boost social, we are going to boost cognitive, we are going to boost emotional skills. Now, with positive parenting, the kids, the teenagers are helped to understand and also regulate their own emotions. Now, if they know what is expected, when you show affection, when you show appreciation, when you seek to understand, this will help the teenagers to regulate their own emotions. It will also minimize the negative effects that have affected both adults and the teenagers. We have all gone through the social, economical changes as a result of COVID. Many of these teenagers are not getting what they were getting before, and all these things affect their psychological well-being. Now, when you're positively parenting, you improve the self-esteem. You know, the child knows, you know, who he is or who she is. She grows up to be a person who will not, you know, feel insecure when in the company of others, you know. They will learn to be independent because they believe that they can do it. Self-esteem, just that as I mentioned, is a protective factor against childhood depression, childhood anxiety, and many, many other mental health challenges that the teenagers go through. Now, what are the positive parenting techniques? I know that at this stage, we must be wondering, so how do I do it? How do I get it done? What is positive parenting? What is this animal? What is the color? So I'm going to show you, I'm going to discuss about the techniques that are involved when we are positively parenting. The number one is be present. You know, it is very important that we find ways to spend quality time with our children and to make sure that we are with them. Now, I know that we are busy, we are getting things done, we are making money, you know, we are career parents, we are flying in and out of the country, you know, we are working across continents, but it is very important that we are present, you know, regardless of our busy schedules, we should be able to find time to be present with our children. And we need to use these experiences of us being present, you know, to build the connection between us and our teenagers. And this connection is the one that maintains a level of trust. Now, by this, the child will feel safe knowing that you have a bond and that this bond is always going to be there. And by the way, even when you discipline them, when a bond has been created, it is not going to work against it, the discipline. It will not work against the measure, the disciplinary measure. Okay? And this will help so much in situations where we find ourselves. Number two, we have to lead by example. You know that our actions actually speak louder. And you know, you've heard about the phrase that, you know, don't preach water and then drink wine. It is very important in positive parenting to lead by example. You need to take time for yourself. You have to find ways to regulate your own emotions. Many times for us to model these healthy coping strategies and other appropriate responses to our children needs us to lead by example. You know, if we want our children to follow, then we are going to lead by the example that we show them. Now, without burdening our children, we need to communicate our feelings with them. And just as I said last Sunday, you know, it does no harm and it doesn't make you appear to be the weak parent. It's just being natural. And the child next time will be able to also come and tell you, Mommy, I'm struggling with this. Daddy, I'm struggling with this and this. Just because you modeled the same, okay? Now, sometimes we may not have to say so much because remember, we have to keep that line and we are parents, but just enough of what they need to know is very important. The third technique is we need to empathize. We need to empathize with their feelings. You know, we need to share, you know, what we have gone through or what probably, you know, resonates with what they went through. Because we have been teenagers, you know, and we know what it means. Okay, so we need to come to that stage of empathizing. Now, I know that we know the difference between sympathizing and empathizing. And what I am saying here is not sympathizing because it won't help. We just need to put ourselves where they are, but also put ourselves to where they are in a way that we can still be able to help them. Otherwise, when we get embedded, then we won't be able to help them. We need to have realistic expectations, you know, and I talked about this last Sunday. Now, teenagers who are trying to navigate their way to adulthood are bound to make some mistakes, you know, and we don't have to criminalize them and make them really feel they are the worst people that they can never be on earth, you know. We just need to empathize with them. And also now from there, move on to the next level of getting them to learn from what they have gone through. Now, we need to focus on repetitive behaviors, you know, rather than one-offs. You know, just as I've mentioned before, the teenage, the adolescence is a time of exploring, is a time of trying to solidify the identity, trying to know who you want to be, who you want to associate with. A lot of vicarious reinforcement takes place around there. Now, if somebody has made a mistake, I think parents, we all make mistakes, but that doesn't mean that we all, you know, continue making mistakes. No, we learn from the mistakes. And so in empathizing with these teenagers, we need to focus on those behaviors that are reoccurring. This one seems to do this over and over and over again. So what is the problem? Not just one off and then everything seems like you have never done anything that is right. Number 4 of the techniques, we need to set boundaries in a positive way. When we are positively parenting, we need to set specific boundaries and we need to be clear about the consequences ahead of time. This will show the child the importance of following rules without making them feel shocked or threatened. You know, in workplaces, there are people who are never going to adhere to what they are supposed to do. They are the ones coming late. They are the ones not doing things and, you know, beating deadlines because they never had that right from the beginning, you know. It is important when we are positively parenting to set boundaries in a positive way because we want, you know, an adult who is going to be able to live and work and lead a productive life. Sometimes we set rules that are not positive, and that is not good. You know, we need to set rules and boundaries. We also do it in a positive way. And we need to show them that it's very important to lead, that when we set those boundaries, that it will lead to positive outcomes, you know, rather than setting boundaries, you know, that are going to be very difficult for the teenagers. You know, we rather make them boundaries, but we do it in a positive way. It is all about positive parenting. Set those boundaries, but in a positive way. Show the teenager that following them is going to lead to positive outcomes. Don't just set boundaries, you know. Why are they there? Remember, they are very curious at this stage. So you need to let them know why you're setting those boundaries. Now, when you work together to decide how much time, for instance, they need to spend per week on games, on messaging or whatever, versus their schoolwork or the homework, it is very important that you discuss with them and also let them know why you are setting those boundaries. Because you can't only be there and not do anything, you know? So let them know why you're setting those boundaries. Now, technique number 5 in positive parenting. Find the root problem. Generally, there is usually more to negative behavior than the behavior itself. And it is usually something internal or external factors that are at play. You know, it's just like you would see a plant and you see the leaves, but then the plant has roots. So it is very important in positive parenting that you find what the root problem is, the cause of what you're seeing, so that instead of only responding to the problem at hand, you're focusing on the reasons behind your teenager's actions. Now, when you do that, you will be able to work towards solving the issue, okay? Many times we are looking at what is on top, we are looking at the leaves, we are looking at the flowers. They are not good leaves, not good flowers, but we are not looking at what is the root. What is the root cause? Now, it is important that you encourage your child, you know, if they're going through a difficult situation, to have a journal, okay? For the girls that come for the psychotherapies, you know, we keep journals, you know, we log in our emotions in a journal, you know, and when we go to reflect on this, we are able to make sense of what is happening, you know. When a teenager is logging in these emotions in a journal or keeping track of what is going on around them, they can be able to tell when probably they get angry more often, you know, what triggers the anger or what they are stressed about. All these are very important when you're to come up with a solution. Number 6, when we are positively parenting, it is very important that we consider the developmental stage that the teenagers are at. You need to think about where your child is regarding social development, you know, regarding emotional development, regarding the physical and etc., so that you can take the appropriate action. Now, you have to consider whether your child has the necessary tools, you know, or if the child is able to have certain conversations with you, or whether it is time for you now to talk about this and not the other, you know, whether it is time for your child to even be able to follow through the rules and the boundaries that you have set. Now, it's very important to reason with your child. It isn't good to talk down on them. And when we are positively parenting, we need to explain why something is necessary or something is against the rules. Very important. Number 7, in positive parenting, we work to turn mistakes into learning opportunities. You know, we all know that even negative situations can be points of learning, can be points of teaching. Now, instead of just punishing, you know, a child, we need to shift our focus to helping them learn and grow so that they can do better the next time. By that, we are turning the mistake into a learning opportunity. We need to find opportunities to teach them about so many different things. Accountability, you know, whenever we give, you know, the pocket money, it is time to talk about accountability. You know, tell them, now I gave you this. How much do you spend on a daily? How much do you spend on a week? Must you spend on this? And through that, you're teaching them accountability. It is important to teach them to problem solve. If they get into a problem, you know, now use that particular, you know, opportunity. Now ask them, what would you have done differently? What can you do now to reverse what has happened? What would you do going forward? All those are, you know, skills that you can teach when you are positive parenting. Now, you also need to help the child plan ahead for difficult situations, because many times these teenagers go through difficult situations, and it is evident that they never even thought that they would ever, go through the difficult situations. Now, we can do a kind of hardiness therapy for them to immunize them against the stressors, that they may go through. They may never go through them, but in case they do, then it is very important to give them the skills, talk through possible difficult times with them. Talk with them through potential solutions. By that, you're equipping them to be able to go through difficult situations and to turn mistakes into learning opportunities. Number 8, we need to follow through. We don't have to make empty threats or promises that we cannot keep. We need to show these teenagers that their actions have consequences and they can't get away with those consequences. This will help them, to within themselves intrinsically to monitor their actions and also to inspire their good behavior. We need to try and allow these teenagers to discover the actual consequences of the specific actions as much as possible, not to only say, don't do this, don't do the other. Now, number 9, we need to use positive reinforcement. Now, positive reinforcement is the way to go. As a psychologist and a behavior scientist, using punishment has been shown not to yield good results. So positive parenting, positive reinforcement. So in positive reinforcement, we need to acknowledge the things that the child does right, rather than fixating them on what they do wrong. And this means that you're avoiding shame and, shaming them, okay? And you're rewarding them their abilities. Now, we talked about this, about expectations, and we also are talking about it here, that we need to acknowledge what they do right. That is very important. And that also can be a way of encouraging them to also take on what they don't do right, because they've acquired that ability. When your teenager does something good, make sure that you reinforce this behavior. Give it positive attention, give it verbal recognition. Sometimes you may give tangible rewards, but with caution. And I say that with caution, okay? But all this is in positive reinforcement. You need to let your child probably choose what maybe thinks is rewarding or what is reinforcing to them, because that is also another way of making them work towards what you're trying to achieve. Number 10, you have in positive parenting to choose discipline over punishment. I have mentioned that, there are very many ways of disciplining a child, and without leaving them feeling scared of you or even feeling threatened. I've had stories from the girls where if the parent is coming, they are running very quickly when they hear the hoot at the gate and they know it is a big car, that is daddy coming, so they will find a way of running. Let us not get over that, There are many ways. You have to be clear, you have to be consistent, and also kind, It is important that we are kind as we discipline, and we have to make sure that they understand why they are being disciplined and also that the consequences are appropriate. We have to make the punishment fit the crime, not that you're going to beat and almost kill, and when you look at what has been done, they cannot, they don't correspond. Now, the last one is create trust. I mentioned about trust and how we can create trust. Sometimes it can be hard to let go of your control. But if you show your teenager that you trust them, even in small ways, in subtle ways. It can help them realize their own capabilities, and also this can empower them to become more independent as they grow, because we are basically looking at how to help them become independent. Now, it is important that we give these teenagers some freedom when they are setting goals and expectations. And fellow parents, when I'm talking about freedom, it is not the freedom in that sense that is free, okay? You're giving guidance. We need to tell them that they need probably to do one thing at a time, okay? But we also allow them to choose which that thing is, rather than overwhelming them. Giving them an expectation to finish homework on time, but also letting them to choose when and how they are going to do it is really enhancing their independence, and it's also a way of creating trust. Now, as a way of conclusion, we are saying that positive parenting is equal to positive kids. Now, this is an ideal situation, and this is hard work to do. It doesn't come so automatically. All the 11 techniques that I have gone through, if you're a parent like me and you're parenting teenagers, you can attest to the fact that it isn't easy peasy. But ideally, this is what it is supposed to be. So now that we know the ins and outs of positive parenting, it's time for us to get started. We may have started already. As I talked, you must be identifying with this and the other. But let's use the techniques that we have shared, and at a time when we meet again, and hopefully physically, we can be able to share our experiences, and we can be able to help our teenagers thrive in any environment. And as I conclude finally, now we go to the manual. And the manual is the Word of God. And the Word of God empowers us as parents and guides us to be able to do this parenting. You know, somebody has said that parenting is not for the cowardly. It's not for the faint-hearted. And that is it. But God's word guides us as we do parenting. Now, Proverbs 22:6 says that we need to train up a child in the way he should go. And even when he's old, he will not depart from it. We need to train them. We need to train our children and keep training. We need to speak to them in wisdom. That is in Proverbs 31:26. While actions do speak louder than words, our words still make a great impact on our children's lives. Now, parents, I said this with a lot of, passion, that the words that we say are very, very important. Now, Proverbs 18:21 says that death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits. Our words have the power to build our children up or tear them down. I am a psychotherapist, and I know the power that is in our tongue, the power that is in the words that we say. Let us be deliberate with our words as we positively parent. And I want also to refer to Titus 2:7, where he says that we need to show them by our lives. And I mentioned that, because these teenagers are like sponges, they keep soaking. They soak in everything we do. They soak in, and even when we don't think they are watching, they are soaking in. But what are they soaking in? Dear parents, let them soak in that which is worthwhile. Let them soak in that which is helping. And finally, Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 6-7. tells us that we need to teach them. We need to teach our children what it means to love God, what it means to be in God, and what it means to follow the path of God. So how do we teach them? You know, and Jesus says, you shall talk of the loving God, your God, with all your heart. You know, you will teach them to love God with all their hearts and minds and soul, and with all their might. And how? We have to teach them when we sit with them in our houses, when we walk with them by the roadside, when they are going to sleep, when they wake up. And this shows us how much we need to do, how much we need to do as parents. So as we positively parent, we need God to be with us, to help us, and to guide us. And so I will stop here for now, and I will hand back to the moderator. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you very, very much, Dr. Kansime, for the insightful, very well articulated and organized presentation on these current parenting issues. I am confident that your valuable insights and practical guidance will go a long way in helping parents with the knowledge and tools they need to navigate these challenges. Thank you very much. Your dedication, expertise, your organization, and how a teacher will go a long way. Thank you very much. And I know they'll make such a meaningful impact. For me, my takeaway is our words have the power to build our children or tear them down. I used to hear parents who used to say, or obusiru bwa kitaawo, and you expect a good report card at the end of the term when you are clearly telling this child whatever you're telling her or them. Really, I think that speaks to me very, very much. Thank you very much, Doctor. So time is fast spent, dear ladies and gentlemen, and at this juncture, I don't know if you can see my screen. I'll share with you part of the program where we are. By this time, we should be listening to Dr. Esther Namfuka. But before we get into that, dear ladies and gentlemen, I want to hear a deeper voice now. So now, prepare for a refreshing perspective from Mr. David Mbabazi, who is a dad, a Rhodesian dad at that, and a very good friend of mine who has journeyed the walk. He will share with us his thoughts on the contemporary parenting. Mbabazi, the floor is yours. I said the screen is yours. Mr. Mbabazi, are you there? Mr. David Mbabazi, I can see you're logged in. Could you please, I need to allow him to. You can now unmute yourself and go ahead and give us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kismark. Good evening, parents. Thank you all for this opportunity to share with you a dad's perspective of contemporary parenting. My name is David Mbabazi, and I will proceed to share my insights. Maybe the thing I'd just like to know is I'm sharing a dad's perspective, and I'm seeing that we are 258 on the platform now. How many dads do we have here? If you're a dad, just type in the comment section and say dad, so that we know at least have a fair, fantastic, I can see, so that we can at least have an idea of the dads who are here. Dads, very proud of you. Thank you yes, that's fantastic. So let me move in straight ahead to what I'm sharing today. The topic has already been shared. Allow me to share my definition of parenting, and then I'll get straight to my brief remarks. Parenting is the lifelong journey of raising our children holistically from the time of conception onwards throughout the journey of life. I will repeat. Parenting is the lifelong journey of raising our children, not just raising them, but raising them holistically from the time of conception. People think that sometimes parenting begins at the time of birth. No, I want to believe it begins even before that, from the time of conception and then onwards through the journey of life. Holistically, as has been shared before, thank you very much, Dr. Rachel, for your very detailed presentation. Holistic parenting refers to areas of the physical well-being of the child, the social well-being, the emotional, the spiritual, and the psychological. Those are the things that form the holistic upbringing of children. My second point is that from the perspective of a dad, parenting is not an event. Parenting is a journey. Parenting is not an event. Parenting is a journey, and not just a journey of 2, 3, 4 years. It's a journey for life, because we still, some of us who are blessed to be having our parents, I believe you still interface or interact with our parents from time to time. So parenting is a journey. It's a lifelong journey. The other point I'm going to make is that if you don't parent your children, somebody else will do it. Somebody else will do it.
Mr. Mbawaz, just to interrupt.
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm seeing someone in the chat section. Do you have something to share? Someone is asking that.
No, I don't have. I just have brief points too, but I'll share them after. Okay, thank you. If you don't parent your children, somebody else will do. If it is not you, then the community will parent your children. Social media, relatives, peers, celebrities, soap operas, all these things will influence your child in a way that you may not have control over. So, whose responsibility is it to parent the children? It is my responsibility as a father to parent the children that God has given to us. The challenges that the children face today, Dr. Rachel has already expounded very generously on them. I just wanted to point out one or two. She mentioned child abuse, peer pressure, time management. We have so many things demanding for our attention. Everybody has 24 hours a day. Nobody has 36 or 48 hours a day. We all have 24 hours, but we struggle a lot to catch up on the different things. When it comes to social media, I dug up a few statistics today. And one of the things I found is that the Play Store has 3.5 million apps, and those are free. 3.5 million apps. So you can see that you as a parent, you're not fighting alone. You have so many things grappling for the attention of your children. Dr. Rachel expounded on the parenting styles. Sometimes the parents may have different parenting styles, and that may cause challenges and conflicts in the home. Then We have also the challenge today of the world being a global village. How is that a challenge? In that it's now increasingly easier for people to study abroad and go to different countries. So you find that as a parent, you want to stay as close to your children as possible, but that is no longer the case because of the global village. So what is the way to go in light of the challenges that I have shared, that Dr. Rachel has shared? What is the way to go? The title of My Way to Go was mentioned by Dr. Rachel. I'm just going to mention it again and emphasize it. It is presence, presence, and presence. We have to be present in the lives of our children. Like I told you before a few minutes ago, if you don't parent your children, somebody else will do. It is hard work. It is hard work. On top of parenting the children, you're also thinking about yourself and the different things. But hey, it's a battle, and you have to be present in the lives of your children. How are you going to be present in the lives of your children? Number one, do you have values that you hold as a parent? What are your values? What are the things that you hold dear in your life that you say, as David Mbabazi, these are my values, these are the things I hold dear in my life? So now that I have the values that I have, do my children know these values? Am I living out those values? Am I speaking them out? Does every part of me express and show the values that I have told them, that I stand for? We have a saying that monkey see, monkey do. It is one thing for me to stand on the rooftop and shout and say, this is what I stand for, but it is another thing for me to live out those values. Now, how are my values? Are they coming out clearly in what I do? Number two, boundaries. That has been expounded very elaborately by Dr. Rachel. But boundaries, in summary for me, is yes and no. There are clear boundaries about life, and it's important that as I am being present in the lives of our children, that I'm able to share with them these boundaries, okay? Number three, in order to be present in the lives of our children, I need to prepare for the journey, for the long-term journey of parenting. It is for life. Number four, and here's a rhetoric question. It bounces back and forth, so I'll just read it twice. Am I preparing my children for the future, or I am preparing the future for my children? I'll read it one more time. Am I preparing my children for the future, or I am preparing the future for my children? Sometimes you will hear a parent saying, I have done this, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, so the future of my children is secure. That is great, that is good, but it's also important that you build the actual child and prepare the child for the future. It goes back to the values. It goes back to the values that you stand for, that you've articulated clearly to the children. So, presence, what does presence mean? Presence means that you are the present to the children. Present meaning you are God's gift to the children. In as much as the children are God's gift to you, you are also God's gift to the children. So if you are God's gift to the children, please Treat yourself like a gift to the children, but also be mindful of the fact that because the children are a gift to you from God, treasure that gift. Treasure that gift that God has given to you. So, Dr. Rachel talked about positive parenting. I introduced an additional dimension to parenting that I would like to call participatory parenting. Participatory parenting means, like we have mentioned in the first point above, is that we prepare for the journey to walk with our children. A few elements of participatory parenting. Number one, sometimes in participatory parenting, you will be ahead of your children. What does that mean? You will be providing leadership and guidance to your children. When you are ahead, remember the values, you know where you're going in life. So when it comes to participatory parenting, there are times when you will be in front of your children and telling them, look here, my son, look here, my daughter, this is the direction we need to take in life. This is the correct way to go. This is where we need to be moving. That is ahead. That's participatory parenting. You are there, you are present, and you tell the child that this is the direction we are going to move in life. The other dimension of participatory parenting is walking alongside your children. What does it mean to walk alongside your children? It means that I am the chief encourager of our children. I am the main and the biggest cheerleader of our children along this journey of life. I'm telling them, you can make it. You have what it takes. I am rooting for you. I believe in you. You are going to make it. That is walking alongside your child and encouraging them. Wow, wow, wow. Imagine what it does to that child when he or she sees daddy and mommy being the chief encourager, the chief cheerleader. The third aspect of participatory parenting, sometimes there are times when the child feels like the world is caving in on them, and then you have to stand from the back and gently push them ahead. Gently push them ahead. Remember, this cannot be done in isolation. You cannot pick the phone and talk from wherever you are, although sometimes it may need that, but where possible, make sure that you are present in the lives of the children, so that you practice participatory parenting in front of the children, where you provide leadership, alongside the children, where you are the chief encourager and the biggest cheerleader, and then from the back, where you gently nudge them and push them forward when they feel that life is caving in and doesn't make sense to them. So, in all of this, what does it show? I'm tying it to what Dr. Rachel said earlier. We need to be at a point where, with our children, we are fighting together on the same side and not fighting each other. We are fighting together. We have a common enemy. We have a common direction. We have common values. And we are fighting together and walking together this journey of life. But we are not fighting each other. We are fighting together. So, there is a proverb that someone shared once, that in this journey of parenting, you either pay now or you will pay later, but you will definitely pay. You either pay now or you pay later, but you will pay. What does paying now mean? Paying now means setting aside the time, quality time, not just time, but quality time, to spend time with our children, as Dr. Rachel has expounded, as I have shared here. Spending time with our children now, you pay that now so that in the future, when these children are no longer under your roof, they are living their lives responsibly. They are living their lives responsibly, and they are living their lives with the values that you have shared with them, or you are sure that you can see that they are aspiring to live out their lives according to the values that you have shared with them. So, in summary, the dad's perspective, let us be present in the lives of our children. Let us be present in the lives of our children. And God will bless us and minister to us and give us the strength to do what we're able to do. I thank you all. I thank you all, dads and moms here. I thank the administration of the school for bringing us together. Over to you, Mr. Kismag, and thank you all for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Mr. David Mbabazi, and this very good dad's perspective of contemporary parenting. This we've had from the dad's end, we've had from the mom's end. Thank you very much for that insightful. The thing I think is, you are not present in their lives, somebody else will be, or something else will be. If you do not parent them, somebody else or something else will do that with you. So I think we can all reflect on that and see how we progress forward. Next, we have the very brilliant Dr. Esther Namfuka, who will guide us through child protection issues. Dr. Esther Namfuka, you're most welcome.
Thank you, Kismag, for, I think that's also flattery in a way, but let's see what happens. So
Doctors are known to be very brilliant.
They are always brilliant. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, let me share my screen, although I need to be given permission to.
I will do that right away. Okay, you can go ahead.
Can my screen be seen?
Yes.
Okay, so good afternoon, parents, fellow parents like me. As introduced, I'm Esther Namfuka Kalule. I think I've given a talk to some parents, especially those who had S4 candidates. So perhaps people know my face, although I don't know if I can show it here, maybe not. So, but hopefully people can relate with my face. So I'm a social worker by profession, and social work is like psychology, like economics, sociology, political science. We are all looked at as professions and disciplines that are known as the social sciences. And for us in particular, we are interested in person in environment. So issues of child protection are very important to us. And for today, I'm just going to talk briefly about, of course, it's a big thing. Child protection is a big thing. But I'm going to give basic tips in line with the theme today, where we are talking about parenting in contemporary times and emphasizing what the parent's role can be when it comes to issues of child protection. But hopefully we shall have more engagements to talk more about child protection, since it's a very important aspect and also very critical and big, of course, a very broad area. Now, for our children, yes, please.
I'm reading through the chats, and someone is requesting that you can just have this in presentation mode so that we don't see the other part of Microsoft PowerPoint.
Okay, here we go.
Run the show, please.
Is that better?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, fine. Thank you. So for children to develop into healthy and responsible adults, we need to protect them from violence and what we call abuse generally. So when we talk about child protection briefly, we are talking about what we should do to prevent, but also respond to violence against children, but also abuse of their rights. Of course, child protection is anchored in the broader discipline, or let me call it entity on issues of children's rights, but we are not going to talk about rights today because that's a different ballgame altogether. So, but when we are talking about child protection, we are trying to prevent violence, and at the same time, we are trying to respond where there is violence and abuse of children's rights. And as parents, we are a very core actor and perhaps the primary child protection actor. So we have a huge responsibility, which is both legal, because the laws mandate that we protect the children from abuse, but we also have a godly obligation, like Dr. Rachel has generously explained. But we also have a moral obligation to protect children from harm, given our values, and especially the cultural values. All our cultures emphasize that as parents, we have the obligation to raise citizens that are safe and responsible, and therefore protection from violence is very, very critical. Now, why should we as parents really care about protecting children from abuse? So first of all, we know that children are vulnerable. Why? Because they are young. And of course, when we talk about children, I know in the African context, we are children for life. But for today, we are focusing on children from the legal definition of those who are 18 and maybe, let me say below 18, but we normally like to talk about children and young people from about 0 up to 24 years. Because in reality, many of these young people are still children in one way or the other who need a lot of guidance, even when they are above the legal age of minors of 18. So we know that by age, they are vulnerable, and because they are young, they are also dependent on us and also voiceless, especially when you talk about the African context. The children come, last when it comes to the social position. So adults are given a lot of power, and then children are given no power. For example, in Uganda, I know, and I believe in most of our cultures here, as a child, you're not expected to speak when adults are speaking. Even sometimes when you're being asked, some parents don't even want you to answer back. So answering back is considered disrespect, and this can silence children. And of course, children are also immature, so they may not be able to take rational decisions. And it also means that they are easy to manipulate and exploit, especially by bad people like we are going to see. And also children are of a low socioeconomic status. They don't have resources, so they are largely dependent on us. So they are unable to do many things that perhaps they would wish to do on their own. And that's why as parents, we have a very big role to play in supporting them. And when it gets into elements of culture, we know that for especially girls, and maybe lately we can also talk about the boys. So culture, the norms can also be harmful towards children. We have issues of gender bias, which can also affect our boys, because when we talk about hard labor, you will find that it's mostly boys who are affected. Even when it comes to some forms of violence, like we're going to see, like physical abuse, it mainly affects boys compared to girls. But of course, girls also have that whole element of harmful cultural practices that they are exposed to. And of course, the caregivers, when we are vulnerable, then it also reflects in the children because they are normally dependent on us. And we also know that we have a very big issue with parenting, and that can expose children to a lot of abuse. Then we also should care because when children are subjected to violence, to exploitation, to abuse and neglect, there are many risks that occur. So we have issues of death. You've heard of cases where children are beaten to death by parents, by peers, by teachers, so many. And then we also have elements of poor physical health, so injuries and all that. And then poor mental health, that is something that we've been speaking about from many, many sessions that we've had with parents. So we know that one of the major causes of poor mental health among children is child abuse. So many children commit suicide because either they fear to be abused because of the actions they've taken. Sometimes it's because they've been abused. For example, there are kids who have killed themselves because they have been bullied. And then issues of self-harm, depression, and all that. So abuse or child violence against children is a very core and big cause of poor mental health among children. And then the issues of low confidence and self-esteem, like we are going to see, especially when it comes to emotional abuse. Some of the things we tell our children play a very big role in lowering their self-esteem and confidence. And then in terms of violent and antisocial behavior, also children who are abused at a higher risk of engaging in violent and antisocial behavior. Sometimes it's because they are trying to seek attention, but sometimes it's also a defense mechanism because this is what they know. As you use violence against them, they also learn violence and it becomes a way of life or a norm for them. And also violence prevents children from, learning to be empathetic. For example, if you look at the criminal gangs around Kampala, if you've read about the criminal gangs, most of these are former street children. So basically children who have been exposed to a lifetime of violence. So they will come and attack you and kill you and steal your things without any remorse because they've never learned to love. They have never learned to be empathetic. So it's a very dangerous situation if our children are not protected from violence. And then there is this whole element of sexual immorality. There's also very strong evidence from research which shows that children who are subjected to sexual abuse also can become sexually promiscuous. And then we also have the risk to STIs like HIV, and it's good we are going to talk about HIV today. And then we have displacement. There's children who run away from home. Many of them, it's because of violence. I always meet my students at Makerere who do not want to go home. Even when the semester closes, they don't want to go home. And when you ask them, they are complaining about the home environment, basically. And it always hurts me as a parent that these children don't want to go home. They would rather hang around the hostels, which of course is not good for them. But because the home environment is tense, they feel they are not understood. Some of you still cane university students. Okay, and so some of them don't want to go home. Then poor parenting skills later in life, like Dr. Rachel also mentioned, we are likely to parent the way we were parented. So if the children are poorly parented through being exposed to violence, then they are more likely to be poor parents also when they become parents. And this is also important for us. So many of these educational challenges we see among children, like poor academic performance, children who don't want to go to school, children who drop out, children who are always in fear and anxious. Sometimes it's because of abuse that they're experiencing. So for example, there is one study that was conducted in schools within Uganda, and they wanted to look at the intersection between violence against children in schools and then mental health and then academic performance. And they found that children who had experienced abuse in the past week were more likely to have poor mental health, particularly depression, anxiety, and suicidality. So that's, we are talking about suicidal behavior, suicide ideation, self-harm, and all that, or even suicide planning. And then the girls who had been abused were twice more likely to perform poorly. So when children are abused, it can also impact on their performance. And this may be because of the poor mental health that comes up when they are abused. So we really need to care about protecting our children from abuse in all settings, home, school, community. And it's also our duty, because we are part of the duty bearers, to protect children from harm legally, morally, and also religiously from the biblical teachings. And also when we prevent violence against children, then we are going to ensure that these children will grow up to reach their full potential. So, but what is this violence against children that I'm talking about? So as a way of creating awareness and for us parents to know what to do, we need to understand what we mean by violence against children and what are the commonest forms. Because sometimes we are perpetrating violence when we don't know that we are actually abusing these children and of course exposing them to harm. So when we talk about violence against children, it involves all forms of physical or mental violence, injury and abuse, neglect or negligent treatment, maltreatment or exploitation, including sexual abuse. So it's a broad range of forms, which can be physical, which can be psychological, which can be sexual, which also include exploitation, okay, and neglect, like we shall see. So, and when we talk about violence, violence is not only intentional. Sometimes even the things we do unintentionally, we may not intend to abuse or harm the children, but when we do these things and they cause harm, then they are considered violence. And we must also be clear that when we talk about violence, violence against children is not only perpetrated by adults, but also peers. Children are also key actors in either, we can say child protection generally, but also in terms of perpetrating abuse against fellow children. So there are many forms, but we are going to focus on the first four: physical, sexual, emotional, and neglect. A bit of the rest may come up, but I'm not going to focus on them in the interest of time. So when we talk about physical abuse, what do we mean? So one is the intentional infliction of physical harm. So we are looking at pain or injury on the child. So things like burning, cutting, slapping, kicking, boxing, choking. Some of you like squeezing the necks of the children or shaking them vigorously because you're angry. Caning, flogging. Of course, flogging is beyond caning. And then corporal punishment, generally, what we call corporal punishment, biting, tying, all these are considered physical forms of abuse because they are intentionally meant to inflict physical harm and pain or even injury on the child. Now, how do we tell that maybe physical abuse is going on? Because sometimes the children do not open up, especially when they are young, or if they fear, because the other party may be threatening them, that in case they tell us, maybe they will do something. So how can we tell? If your children come home or you meet children, because I know when we are doing child protection, it's not only our children, it could be relatives and other. If you realize that these children always have unexplained bruises in various stages of healing, then perhaps there's some form of physical abuse going on. Then we are talking about welts. Welts are more like marks or human bite marks, unexplained burns, unexplained fractures, swollen areas, or evidence of delayed or inappropriate treatment for injuries. Then you need to get concerned, because one way we identify abuse is by getting concerned. So if all the time this person has burns, then perhaps something is not right and you may need to get interested in how to help this child. Then we have sexual abuse, which is a very, I would call it complex, because in most cases, we don't see it. It's kind of invisible because people don't talk about it. And when it comes to reporting also, it is one of the least reported forms. So, but in its broad sense, we need to know that sexual abuse has two aspects. So there is contact, but there is also non-contact forms. So I know most of us are familiar with the contact, but when you look at it more broadly, you realize that actually sexual violence is very, very common, much more common than we think. So one of the contact forms that is known is behavior involving penetration, so which could be vaginal, which could be anal, or it could be oral sex. I believe the parents here have an idea about these things. And then we also have fondling, or what we may call abusive sexual touches. So touching or kissing a child's genitals, making a child fond of an adult's genitals, these things of pinching, grabbing, so what we may call bad touches generally. So all those are contact forms. And then we have non-contact forms, including violations of prying on a child in the bathroom or bedroom. So you're basically looking at a naked child. You're basically looking at a naked child, then exposing children to adult sexuality. So for example, when adults are having sex and they don't mind about what the children are watching, this is a form of abuse. These things traumatize the children. So exposing genitals, children get very traumatized by these things. Telling dirty stories, showing pornography to a child, all those are forms of non-contact sexual abuse. And then we also have exploitation, which involves selling a child's services as a prostitute or a performer in pornography. But then we also have sexual harassment, or what is also closely linked to pressured sex. You're basically telling the child and luring them and putting them on tension that they should sleep with you. And even these things we see on the street, the children are moving and then these borders normally like screaming, "Saizi yange." Those are elements of sexual harassment, and they are not good for children. Then we have this upcoming and increasing form called the online sexual abuse and exploitation. Many of us are not aware of it, but it's very common. Even in Africa, it's increasing. And one of the forms in which it manifests is sexting. There are these random people who start writing to children and even adults online, and they are sending sexual images. They are sending messages that are, seductive. That's what we are calling sexting. And then exposure to pornography. I know many cases of children who are addicted to pornography. So these come as suggestions, and then because the children are curious, they tap and then get excited and start getting addicted to these things. And there are a lot of pornographic materials online. Then child grooming. So now this one, normally these are strangers who are online scavenging to look for vulnerable people. And of course, children are among them. So they befriend the child, and the intention is to abuse them sexually, ultimately. So befriend them, pretend to be their friend, and especially the children who are active on social media, sometimes they post things when they are sad or they are complaining about certain things. So this person pretends to be their friend and siding with them. So eventually, over a period of time, they may gain their trust. And then eventually they are asking them if there are any parents who watch. They do all the homework that they need to do. And then afterwards, of course, tell them, we are very close, so you don't need to share this with anybody. And then the next thing they are telling them, take a picture when you're naked, share, take a video, do this. Some even go out of the way to insist that they meet the children, to abuse them physically. Okay? So we need to be very mindful about who the children are talking to online, because there are a lot of random people who are sending messages and trying to befriend the children. We need to empower the children to know and maybe block them, or we should mind what they are doing. And then we also have those who share pornographic material involving children. So all those are forms of sexual abuse. And now, how can we tell that perhaps our children are being abused sexually? Because in most cases, the children even feel embarrassed to tell us or to share with us what is going on. And sometimes they are being manipulated and threatened by people like those ones they meet online who are grooming them. So they have shared maybe a nude picture. And this person now says, if you don't do this, I'm going to share this with your parent. I know your parent, because they also see your online activity. So they may fear to tell you, but how can we tell? So one of them could be inappropriate interest or knowledge of sexual acts. So if you're looking at a very young child and they know so much, then you need to think twice and get concerned. Perhaps something is going on. Someone could be feeding them with information, or they are exposed online through, watching these pornographic materials. And then if the children are also, depicting seductive behavior, you see them around the opposite sex and the things they are doing are not appropriate, you need to get concerned. And then extra aggression. So if they're aggressive towards the opposite sex or over-compliant, want to associate with them easily, then perhaps something is going on, because extra aggression could be perhaps they were raped or forced, and so they don't want to see these people. And also if the children start fearing a particular person or family member, don't start undermining and trivializing this, thinking, oh, this person is also tough. I don't know why all the children fear them. Perhaps this person does bad things to them. So we may need to think twice and pay particular interest, and see what could be going on. Then we also have emotional abuse, perhaps the commonest, because many of us who don't even cane, we're abusing our children emotionally. I know we also abuse each other as adults emotionally. If you look at the national statistics, when it comes to emotional abuse between men and women, it is 50-50. But when you look at other forms, physical, the males are mainly the perpetrators, so women experience that. But when it comes to sexual, still it's women. But when it comes to emotional abuse, you find that the figures are 50-50. So emotional abuse, we are looking at, or what we may call psychological abuse. So things like belittling or shaming the children, name calling. Someone talked about we calling our children that they have obusiru watata. And there is somebody who argues that in Africa, our parenting style is a PhD, pull him or her down. We are somehow built or raised to think that we should pull children down. Maybe it's a way of asserting our authority as parents or as adults, but definitely it's impacting negatively on our children. So some of us like reminding our children about what is wrong with them. They remind you about the big teeth. The teeth are like an axe. The legs are crooked. These are the things we are talking about. And it's also not good to compare children. Let's treat each child as an individual who is unique, uniquely gifted. They may have their own challenges. No one is perfect, but stop comparing children, because this is one of the reasons why sometimes even siblings have rivalry. So because you're comparing, why can't you be like so-and-so? Why? So you're basically killing the person's esteem. Let's encourage each child as they are and accept them as they are and be able to build on their strength from their own capacities. So, and some of us, of course, call the children mistakes. Some of us call them that they are no good, they are worthless. There is one who told me that the father used to call them a biological mistake. Okay. So those things belittle the children and hurt them emotionally. Then issues of blaming the children all the time, you tell them it is their fault. Okay, it is your fault that this happened. You're always criticizing. You never say anything positive. You only see negative things. You're always yelling at the children. So you're traumatizing them. And then those of us who ignore the children, like we know all of us are social beings, and for children, being accepted, being shown love and attention, warmth, all that is very important for their social and emotional development. So when we withhold affection, we're actually hurting them and abusing them emotionally. So we must be able to give them those physical affection is important, hugging, praising, expressing love in the best way that we know. But it's not good to neglect our children and ignore them. Then we also have extreme punishment. So actions that are meant to isolate and terrorize a child, such as tying them to a fixture or a piece of furniture. I know some of us have punishment corners. I think even Gayaza, someone told me you have a punishment tree. So these are the things we are talking about. You make the person stand there the whole day. You don't know what you're doing to them in terms of their emotions. You're hurting them. So locking them in dark rooms, they get traumatized and of course stigmatized at the end of the day. And then exposure to violence and domestic abuse. So violence against children is also perpetrated when there is violence and the children are watching. So when people are fighting, some of us love fighting like parents. You're yelling at each other, you physically beat each other, you're actually traumatizing your children. And there is evidence that observing violence or witnessing violence harms the children as much as when it's directly inflicted on them. So we need to be very careful as parents to protect children from our conflicts and struggles. Then there is neglect, which takes different forms. So we have physical, we have educational, medical, and emotional. And when we talk about physical, like the word goes, physical is about the basics of food, shelter, clothing, or hygiene. So if we neglect, we do not provide these essentials to the children, but it also involves reckless disregard for the child's safety, such as when we leave children to walk around aimlessly on the road. You're drunk driving with the children, so you're basically not caring about the children, and so they are likely to be at risk, maybe of being knocked or being harmed by hazards in the environment. Then we also have medical neglect when we refuse to provide or we delay in providing necessary health care for the child. And then we have educational neglect when we fail to enroll children in school. We know that education is considered one of the basic needs and rights of children. And then when we permit or cause a child to miss too many days of school, so we are also considered neglectful. And when we refuse to obtain services for children who have special needs, I know in many of our homes in Uganda here, there's research that shows that people hide their children with special needs because of the cultural connotations. People always say that when you get a child with special needs, then you're cursed. So some of them are hidden, and this is also considered neglect. Then we have emotional neglect. Perhaps this concerns us most. So where we do not adequately nurture our children, or we show them very little affection. So when we ignore our children, when we are not there for our children, emotional neglect is very, very dangerous. Many of our children are provided everything they need, but they are suffering, especially getting mental health issues, because they feel we don't love them, because we don't give them time, like the previous speakers have said. So then when we expose the children to spousal abuse, so parents are fighting and we are busy exposing our children. We don't care to protect the children from our conflicts and issues. The children get traumatized. No child wants to see their parents at loggerheads. When you talk to children, they will keep telling you, I want them to be friends. Can you intervene? Can you help my parents? They are always fighting, please. So you're hurting the children actually by fighting and exposing them to those conflicts. So we also need to find a way of handling our disagreements more maturely and in a more protective manner, caring about how it affects our children. And then we talked about parenting styles, and one of them was permissive parenting. So permissiveness is also seen as a form of emotional neglect because you're just allowing the children to do whatever they want. So you're basically not providing any control and guidance, which is expected to help these children to grow responsibly. And these are the same people who do not want to intervene when the child demonstrates antisocial behavior. So you've heard of people who say, this person doesn't want us to say anything about their child. Even when you complain, they will attack you instead of guiding their children. So that is also seen as neglect. And when we fail to provide necessary psychological care also, we are seen as being neglectful. So signs of child neglect. So basically here we talked about when we see children who are always dirty, they don't look like they're hair unkempt, they have untreated diseases, they always look like they have not bathed. Some of them, it's about hunger. You go to parties and you see particular children are overeating, rushing for food like there is no tomorrow. That's perhaps a sign that they are being denied food. And then apparent lack of supervision when children are always abandoned, that can also be a sign of neglect. And when it comes to those in school, when children are always absent from school or always late, when they are troublesome, because many times when children are neglected, they intend to involve in trouble, engage in trouble for purposes of getting attention, and also disruptive behavior or its opposite, which is being withdrawn. All those may be signs that these children are being neglected. So what does this all mean for us as parents? I've rushed through, so hopefully the forms of violence have come out. And of course, we've not talked about rights, but maybe that can come another day. So, but these are some of the things that we can do to protect our children from abuse. So first of all, we need to create a safe home environment because this is an area where we have total control. So you may need to ask yourself, if you reflect, do your children feel safe at home? Because I know I always do a lot of work in schools, and you'll find children who cry when it's time to go home because they don't want to go home. That says a lot about the home environment and how unsafe these children feel. And by the way, home is supposed to be the safest place for all of us, but unfortunately, in many cases, it's also the most dangerous place for many of us, including adults, but also children. So we need to mind who we invite in our homes or who we leave our children with. And we shouldn't just trust anybody. So because research shows that the people who abuse children are usually not strangers, especially when it comes to sexual abuse. So you will find that most of the people who abuse children sexually, because sexual abuse, unless it's forced, in most cases, it involves, you know, there are people we trust, so it is easy for the children to be manipulated and abused without them even suspecting anything. And sometimes they don't even know that they are being abused. So we need to be very careful. When you look at many people, there is a study that was done here in Uganda, and it turned out that many children who are victims of sexual abuse had actually been abused before age 13. So we need to think about friends. We need to think about these people we call cousins, even siblings, aunties, house helps, uncles, even parents. We've just been dealing with a case of a parent, a father who was abusing his 3 children sexually and threatening them. If they talk, he's not going to pay fees, he's going to slaughter them. So it can be very, very dangerous. We need to be very mindful. And these days we can't even trust female or male. I know a young man who was telling me about an aunt that the mother used to trust so much. And of course, as he grew up, he realized that what she was doing to him was actually abuse, okay, sexual abuse. So let's be very mindful who we invite home and who we leave our children with. Let's do our double checks. Let's not just trust anyhow. And we also need to reflect on our own actions to prevent abusive behavior. We've been talking a lot about positive parenting. We've been talking about the forms of abuse. And many times, maybe we do not know that we're abusing our children when we start telling them things like, because maybe we are angry with their father, or you are a biological mistake, or you have a fat head, or or your teeth are like those of an axe, maybe because they have annoyed you and you're trying to put them in their place. So let's be very mindful how we behave and how we relate with the children. Then we also need to educate the children about risks for abuse. So the children need to be aware, because we've also learned that many children do not know what is abuse. We once went to a school to do research, and then we were asking children about various forms of abuse that they had encountered or experienced. And there is this particular girl who broke down because we asked her, has anybody touched your private parts? And then she says, but there is a man, our neighbor, he always calls us and is touching all of us, so we thought it was okay. So we need to teach these children what is permissible. So things to do with bad touches, communication, those conversations are very important for our children to have with us, so that they know what is not proper and what they should report. And of course, we need also to empower them to report. One, they need to get information about the various forms of abuse and the risks that they may be exposed to, but at the same time, they need to know where to report. And for them to feel free to report to us and inform us, we must build trust. So one of the biggest elements when it comes especially to issues of sexual abuse is the element of confidentiality. Many children die in silence because they fear that you're going to tell another person. And you know, these conditions are very stigmatizing. So for example, we were asking children in schools, because we have these people called senior woman teacher. So they were coming to us because we were doing a school social work program. They were coming to us to tell us their issues. And when we tried to engage, okay, maybe we need to involve the teacher, they'll say, no. They never keep secrets every time they're discussing our issues. So even as a parent, if your children do not trust that you will keep their issues confidential, because tomorrow they may hear you discussing with the aunt or your friends, they may never tell you. And when it comes to sexual abuse, remember many times it is people close to them, so they feel embarrassed, perhaps they feel ashamed, they are blaming themselves that they could have prevented it. Sometimes they feel confused, so they need somebody to talk to, and that person should be somebody they trust to keep their issues confidential. And we also need to empower our children to avoid risky situations. For example, things like moving at night, avoiding bad company. So we must have conversations about various risks so that we empower them to be able to take the right decisions. And it's very important that we do not stigmatize abused children. When issues are shared with us or when we identify cases, please mind how you share them and who you share them with, because otherwise you may actually expose them to another range of abuse and stigma, okay, which is not good. And of course, you will also break the trust and they may never share with you again. Then we must also emphasize and remind children of their responsibility to ensure that their rights are realized. and not just for themselves, but also for other children. So we always talk about rights of children, but it's not enough for us to remind them about their rights. We must also remind them about their responsibility. As children, they are also key actors and one of the primary actors in the realization of their own rights, such that when we do our part as parents, if I pay fees, for example, then the child should know that they have the responsibility to study hard. They also have the responsibility to respect parents. So, and they have the responsibility to ensure that other children's rights are not abused, because they are also key perpetrators. They are the ones who bully. They are the ones who also emotionally abuse. They discriminate, they isolate. They also do a range of things that are putting other children's rights at risk, and of course, abusing other children. So responsibility is very important. They must know that they have a very big role to play in their own protection. So taking the right actions, avoiding dangerous situations, all that needs to be emphasized. And then we must adopt positive disciplining approaches rather than the punitive ones. You've heard about positive parenting, which is supposed to be based on reinforcing positives and rewards. So similarly, instead of sticking to our adage of spare the rod and spoil the child, we can also try to redefine our rod. So let's participate. Someone talked about participative parenting. So there must be collaboration. Let's discuss with the children. Let's set rules and hold them accountable. They must know where the limits are and in a participatory manner so that they understand and also associate with these things and own the rules that we have set. So your rod may be redefined in terms of taking away privileges, because if we agreed that you must come back by 7 and you don't, then I stop you from going out next time. The child would clearly understand why this has been done, and they won't take it in bad faith, and they will work to become better persons to avoid such negative situations again. So then we should also practice positive rather than harsh parenting. That has been explained in detail. But also as parents, we must educate ourselves about the risks children are exposed to. And remember, the risks will change by age. So for example, as our girls become teenagers, then the risk to sexual abuse increases. So we must take preventive measures. And now we've talked about the issue of online abuse or online sexual abuse. And of course, there's also cybercrime generally, where children may be harassed online, people may shame them, all those things. So we also need to watch what they are doing online and empower them to be able to take the right decisions, and also inform us when they are challenged. And we must keep the channels of communication with our children open. And this means that we must nurture a trustful relationship so that they feel free to share anything with us without fear of being judged. So like they've already said, as teenagers, we always do not want to be judged. So as parents, we must learn to appreciate, to listen, to be patient, to even control and be tolerant, because sometimes the things the children are telling us may be against our norms and values, because some of us are from a different generation. So, but let's try to be tolerant, listen, and aim to guide and understand rather than judging them, because the moment you judge them, then they will never tell you their things, and that's very risky. And we must also pay attention to signs and symptoms of abuse and engage the children in a calm manner to avoid scaring them off, because when we overreact also, then we may mute them and discourage them from telling us what they are going through. So, and we must be empathetic. This has also already been emphasized. So as we engage our children, let's seek to guide and counsel rather than to hurt them. So that should be our approach, being kind, being empathetic, seeing them as children who need guidance rather than our adversaries, okay? Because some of us tend to approach children like we are enemies. So let's guide them and counsel them rather than hurting them. And we must also seek help where necessary. I know parenting is not an easy thing. We go through a lot of struggles, but we must remember that self-care is key. Because if we do not feel mentally, physically, or even, other forms of well-being, if we are not well, then most likely we are not going to treat our children well. So if I'm frustrated the easier people to displace my frustration on are likely to be children. So if we are going to prevent being abusers of our own children, then we must promote self-care as well, but also learn to seek help where necessary when things get overwhelming. That can help us to become better parents. So as I conclude, I would like to emphasize that as parents, we have the power to build or break children because the children are in our care much of the time, and we take most of the decisions that affect them. So we can either use our power constructively or destructively. So my encouragement is that we should use our power and our privileged position as the caregivers constructively to build rather than destroy the children. So a single act of abuse, so including you calling the child stupid or a short put or I don't know what, or we identifying cases of concern and we do not respond, we may actually destroy children for life. So child protection is our responsibility. So my message is that we should all embrace it, and this can help us to raise very responsible and constructive citizens for the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Esther Namfuka. This presentation is one of those presentations that just make me speechless. And I'm sure certain people are speechless as well, but thank you so much. This sounded like a research paper that we all needed to listen to very, very carefully. Thank you very, very much. It was very informative for me as a person, and I think it was informative to the rest of the other people. People are experts in things, and thank you very much, Doc. Now, our final presentation is going to be from Dr. Nalintia. Now, this one, on this first day of December, which also doubles as the World AIDS Day, comes from Dr. Elizabeth Nalintia, who will tackle the sensitive but crucial topic of HIV/AIDS among teens and young adults. Parents, by the way, HIV/AIDS still exists and it's a reality. We stay vigilant and not lower our guard. Happy New Month from me, and over to you, Nalintia. Forgive me if that is not the pronunciation of the name, but you're most welcome. Time is fast spent. We have just about 6 minutes to 6:30. I pray that it is brief and simple. Thank you. Hello, doctor.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Sorry, I was talking while unmuted. Good evening, everyone. I'll continue to stir everyone into the good work of parenting our children. And my task today is to paint the picture of the problem, HIV/AIDS. Is it a problem anyway? If you're not aware that it is a problem, you're unlikely to take steps to address it in this area of parenting. So as I start, I'll just try to paint the big picture of where we are. Mr. Kizmag, I have a few slides. Are you able to allow me to share?
Yeah, please go ahead. No problem.
Are you able to see them now?
Yes, sure.
Okay. Yeah, so that will be the topic: adolescent HIV infections and trends in these infection rates. So I'll use this 2020 Ugandan survey, community-based survey, to try and paint the picture of what the problem is in Uganda for HIV. And as we paint the big picture, we'll begin to narrow it down to our adolescents and young adults to see, is it actually a problem in this population, or is it something we should not be thinking about? So in 2020, the prevalence, and prevalence just means the number of people who have tested HIV or who are currently infected with HIV. That's what it means really in lay terms, varied across the sex. So it was different for males and for females. And for females, it ranged from an average of 1.7% for people who were aged 15 to 19 years, and all the way to 13.6% for females who were aged 50 to 54 years. And for the male sex, it ranged from 0.2% for the 15 to 19-year-old boys, all the way to 11.1% for those who are 45 to 49 years. And why do I bring this picture here? It is to show you who is at risk, where is the biggest proportion of people who have HIV. Among the females, it is the older females, 50 and above. Among the males, it is the middle-aged men who are 45 years to 49 years. Let us narrow this down to the adolescents of interest, the children that we parent, the children that are in our schools. It is different for boys than for girls. As you could see, the girls' prevalence is a bit higher, 1.7%, and the boys very low, 0.2%. And the question I present to you, my fellow parents, is these 1.7% females that have HIV, if the boys' rate of percentage is very low at 0.2%, we need to think about who is infecting these girls. And I'll leave that for you to ponder. So as I paint this picture, I'm going to use stories, 3 stories, and these stories are surveys that have been carried out here in Uganda. And I'll try to depict how sexually active are these 15 to 19-year-olds, what are their perceptions, how big is the problem of sexual activity, how big is the problem of HIV among these young children. So Mbarara University here near us set out to look at school-going adults, and it just went out and asked them random questions about how sexually active they are, how risky their sexual behavior was, and I'll just highlight what they found. So they interviewed a total of 110 school-going adolescents, and it is surprising, or not surprising, that 35% of these children were actually sexually active. Of these 35% that were sexually active, 20% defined their sexual activity as risky. And risky would mean they didn't use a condom when they had sex, or they had multiple sexual partners. And in that survey of interest was that children who were more than 18 years were more likely to be sexually active, and the boys, children who were males, were more likely to be sexually active. Similarly, those who were taking alcohol, smoking, or had drug abuse issues were more likely to be sexually active. So the other story I'll try to bring out, or the other survey that has been done, was here, bringing it closer to Mukono, where someone set out in 3 secondary schools. He picked randomly 3 secondary schools and a few non-school going adolescents or young adults, and asked them similar random questions about sexual activity to kind of understand what the problem or the magnitude of the problem was. And this particular person went a bit further and asked questions about early sexual debut. And early sexual debut here is defined as having sexual intercourse at or before 14 years of age. And I will say again, surprising or not surprising, in this person's survey, 22.6% of females actually had sex at or before 14 years of age, and 22.1% males had sex at or before 14 years of age. And the bigger finding in this study was that by 19 years of age, nearly 70% of both males and females had actually had sexual intercourse. So the other story I'm going to tell, the third and final story, is someone went out and looked at the timing. From the time these girls begin to have their menstrual periods, how long does it take for them to actually engage in sexual activity? And here I'll just highlight the major finding. And by the way, all these are studies within Uganda. So this person found out that 67.4% of female youths had experienced sexual intercourse. And the mid or median time from the time they had had their first period to the point when they had their first sexual intercourse was 4.3, 4.4 years among the female correspondents who answered this interview. So my dear fellow parents, this is a problem. The question I want you to begin to ask yourself is that given these statistics, these alarming statistics of sexual activity, could my child be a victim? Could my child be actually sexually active? And do I even know, or what is my part in all this? So the other thing I'm going to do in painting this picture of HIV among adolescents, and this presentation really is focusing among people who are 15 to 19 years, is how big is this problem globally? So I'll borrow from the 2024 UNICEF survey that has brought out about 6 important points about HIV and adolescents. It states that these young people and adolescents are presenting a growing share of people living with HIV in the world. And in 2023 alone, the new infections among persons aged 15 to 19 years was about 140,000 adolescents. That is not a big number if you think about the fact that one of us could be a victim. And they state that if the current trends continue, this trend is going to go higher. The numbers are only going to increase. And by 2030, they estimate that there will be an extra about 40,000 adolescents who will be infected with HIV/AIDS. So these adolescents have been found to account for 3% of people living with HIV/AIDS, and they account for about 12% of all new adult HIV infections. So in the bigger picture of new HIV infections happening globally, adolescents are contributing to 12% of these new infections. And sad to say that majority of these are happening within sub-Saharan Africa, where we all live. And UNICEF found out that in 2023, adolescent girls accounted for more than 2/3 of all new HIV infections among adolescents. There are almost 6 times more adolescent girls being newly infected with HIV than their counterparts, the adolescent boys. So I think this problem is with us. It is a big problem. We need to be aware of it as parents, and we need to be actively involved, just like the previous speakers have spoken. If you know that my child lives within the system that has a burden of HIV this big among adolescent girls, for example, how much more should I be engaged in making sure that my child does not become a statistic? So I just display that bar graph to show you and to emphasize the difference in new infections among boys and girls globally. And as you will see, in the globe, 70% of the new infections happening among adolescents are girls. The brighter orange is girls, the yellow is the boys. And the trend is true for East and Southern Africa, where we live, West Africa, where we live, and but this trend kind of changes a bit for people who are in Asia and Latin America, North America, I guess because of the different sexual practices that are present in those geographical regions. So I just put that there for you to know that your children, the girls are at risk, But when you send them to another geographical place, the tables might turn. The boys are at risk as well. So yes, we know that the problem is with us. Let us see, have things changed over time? How bad has the problem been? Has there been a change? We were talking about 2024. Is this progress? Have we made progress? And what is our role as parents? So this graph here just shows the trends in new infections among adolescent girls aged 15 to 19. And as you can see, it is stretching from 2010 to 2023, that is over 10 years. The gradient is very, very, very low. I would say in statistics, you would say that there has not been a statistically significant change in decrease of new infections among these adolescent girls. And this calls to us as parents saying, if the government is not putting in the effort that it is, or if the community or the church has not put in the effort that it has taken to increase the steep in the reduction of these new infections, maybe it is time for you and I, the parents, to start doing our role and to really do a good job. And the trend is not different for boys. As you can see, the prevalence for boys is a bit lower, much, much lower. But even over the 10-year period that we are seeing in that bar graph, there has not been much change. Therefore, it is a call for us as parents to do our job, to know that there is a problem, and to make sure we are tackling the problem. And just as a closing remark, in this presentation, my job was very simple: to paint the picture for us as parents, to see that there is a problem, to define how big the problem is. And the previous speakers have spoken to us and given us tips on how we can be part of solving this problem. I put that in red to show you that when it comes to HIV, knowledge is power. When you educate your child, when you inform them of the risks, when you inform them of the possible ways that they can be at risk, you are empowering them. You and I as parents should never be silent. I know the African culture says, don't talk to your child about sex, don't talk to your child, don't expose them, they are too young. But in the light of the prevalence that we have defined above, we need to talk, we need to empower our children, because when it comes to HIV, the only power that you're giving your children is knowledge. Thank you very much. I'll hand this back to you, Mr. Kismet.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Indeed, knowledge is power. I was very guilty when I looked at the clock and time. I couldn't stop because it is this previous presentation. Factual, well-researched. I want to thank all the parents who are still logged on, and everyone. And gentlemen, thank you for your patience, but I thought that we all needed. Your voice sounded very HD. It was in HD. I don't know if you're in a recording studio or in Sweden. Sweden is known for producing very nice music. From the Maddox Timbers, the Phile Rutayas, who used to record music. Those they have very good music. Listen to it. Thank you very much, Doctor. Now, 40 was supposed to leave this place at 6:20, 20 minutes later. Parents, this is the moment. We have questions, but we have a powerhouse panel ready to answer. I'll keep them few and very brief, and most of them have been answered in the chat section by our counselor and the panelists there. If we can have 2 or 3 or 4, and we can call it space for honest conversations. And now let's get into that Q&A for clarity that we all need. So if there are any questions, I'll take on about 3 or so questions, and we can. So I'll open the microphones. I'll allow you to unmute yourselves. You can put up your hand. I have Coach Miriani. Coach Miriani, if you have something to say, you'll go first, number 1. But these presentations were really good, according to what I'm Coach, over to you. If the coach is not there, I'll take just 3 or so questions, and we'll call it. You can just raise your hand, then I pick on you, and we'll get going. I think most of it is appreciation. I think most of them have been answered in the chat section. Okay. If there are some burning questions, they can come through the audio section. And if there are no questions there, I'm going to... Julie Cav, can we say that there are no questions? Can we conclude that way? That everything was very clear, well researched and everything?
I think so. I think
All
so.
right. Glad to hear that. I just put something in the chat section that intrigued me, and I'm just going to read it out. Thank you. Thank you for your enlightening presentation, Dr. Esther. Are you familiar with the timeout punishment for children? Don't know if that actually, that one was about the recommended number of canes. Okay, I'll read it here. I wrote it somewhere. Caning as a form of violence, is there a recommended number of canes considered normal? Someone asked, and I think we can have one of the panelists.
Kismag.
Yes, please.
So the recommended number of canes, no, because so the corporal punishment or caning actually is illegal by law in the Ugandan context, and it's punishable with, it even has a prison sentence attached to it. So basically the recommended number is 0.
Okay, if we are to go by mathematics, that is 0. If you wanted a number, the number is 0. So I don't know, Doctor, if sometime later we will have a workshop or a webinar on children abusing their parents. From what I am reading and picking from the presentations, like these days the parents should stop abusing their children. But to me, I think it's now children who are abusing their parents. I don't know how far true that is. That would be something.
No, I think there is a trend coming up. That is true. Children can also abuse. So as of course, it also goes back to how we parent and the rules that we set. So if you're a permissive parent, like they said, you're like a friend, and a friend who has no limits, because we're always encouraged to befriend the children, but there must be boundaries. There are certain boundaries that they cannot cross. So you remain a parent and an enforcer of discipline, and the guider and the counselor and everything. So there must be a very clear boundary.
All right. Thank you very much, Doctor. And this one is just for me as a person, from me as a person. How are schools supposed to keep these children on track? Because for us, we have punishment tree, and you talked about the punishment tree. Because for us, we think that we are not supposed to abuse these children physically, that violence, the physical violence. So someone has done something that is not right. We send them just under the punishment tree for just a few minutes so that they can get back to track. They get back of beating, slapping. I don't know what you have to say about that. Or how you advise that moving forward, we manage to, the extreme, especially the extreme conditions, the extreme, when the children get the other side of the law extremely.
So, ultimately, you need to balance, because when it comes to child protection, we are also trying to put the best interest of the child first. So if you're asking the child to stand under the punishment tree, lessons are going on, and maybe they spend there 2 hours. How is this affecting them emotionally also? But they are also missing in class. So I don't know if it's the best way to actually discipline them. So, but you're also embarrassing them before the whole school. So it can be emotionally humiliating. You may never know how a particular child reacts. Because also remember, we are dealing with different children. Some children are more resilient, so they may be able to overcome that and move on. Others may get actually emotionally damaged by simply standing under that tree. You may call it simple. And then they are missing classes. They are maybe, you don't know, maybe they will even be bullied. Perhaps they are called names by those who see them. So maybe you need to assess the impact of this punishment tree and whether it's actually getting you the results that you need. But there are many, many ways of disciplining children. I think you have other what you may call punishments, which like when you tell them to do work, when other people are resting for them, they are doing some work so that they are not missing a lot in class. So you may need to weigh and see the impact.
Okay, I hope we don't get back to square one. Thank you very much, Doctor, for that response. And I think there are no more questions.
But we may also need, Bismarck, I think we may
have
also
a
need a session on
I have a
positive
question.
disciplining.
Okay. All right, thank you, Doctor. Noted. Yes, please, someone has a question before we step out of this place.
Yes, thank you very much, Doctor, and thank you, Gaia's High School for this this series of presentations. Very, very useful. But I have a concern, really. Somebody has said, and I posted it in the group, that we are having a generation where parents fear their children. That parents now have been caged and put in a corner. They fear to talk about the children because immediately they'll be branded as abusive. And that in the process, children now actually lead homes. The child, you can't, you take away the remote and the child just simply says, this is not fair. You are abusing me. This is my right. How do we really balance the rights of children, but also the responsibility and duties of parents to guide their children? Because I mentioned that it should not be lost on anybody that parents actually know the best interests of their children and that whatever they do, except for just a few cases perhaps that should not be taken as a rule, that those are the ones that mistreat or abuse children. The balance between abuse and guidance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Doctor, do you want to speak to that? The children are starting to bully us.
So like I said, so it also depends on how we set the boundaries. But like I think I also emphasized in my presentation that when we are teaching children about rights, which is important because we don't want others to abuse them, we must also emphasize their responsibility. So if you're my child, I have the responsibility to take care of you. I have the responsibility to promote your rights. Then you must also do your part as a child. And that must be emphasized to our children. They have a very big responsibility as well. So if we simply promote rights and always accept whatever they want, then actually we are getting into permissive parenting and not setting boundaries. That's how children will start stepping on us. But that's not how it should be.
Thank you so much, Doc. We can't get any further than this. And just like that, we have come to the end of another amazing session. I want to thank all our panelists and the administrators, the staff, and everyone who joined in for their incredible insights, for the panelists, and for all the parents for staying here longer than we expected and for making time to join us. Parenting is not easy. It is not a sprint. It is a marathon, one filled with laughter, lessons like we've just learned, and sometimes a little chaos here and there. But together, we are stronger, smarter, and better equipped to handle whatever comes our way. Thank you. Until next time, have a pleasant evening and week ahead. By the way, we shall break off for holiday this coming Thursday, 5th December 2024. We shall update you in case of any more information. Have a pleasant evening once again and stay